Well, it's happened. I have gotten to the point in this project where I am really intimidated by making the gown, so instead I'm procrastinating by making literally everything else, which means that today I'm going to be making an apron. I've seen some portraits and extant garments from the 18th century where the apron has this little bib that extends from the waistband and then is pinned up in the front, and I love how that looks. I just think it's so adorable. So I'm going to add that to my apron. I'm also taking inspiration from another YouTuber, Thistle, link to her page in the description below, centering the gathers of the apron kind of wider over the hips. I like how it really emphasizes that mid-century wide silhouette and also makes the tummy region a little more flattering. My limited knowledge of aprons in the 18th century is that women of all types wore aprons, but the type of apron worn would have varied by social class and by time period. Early in the century, working class women would have worn aprons made of a white linen because those fabrics were cheap and also easy to launder. Now, to distinguish themselves from the masses, upper class women would have worn aprons of linen or checked cotton because that material was much more expensive. They may also have made aprons with fine embroidery that were purely decorative. As the century wore on and those striped and checked fabrics became much cheaper, working class women began to adopt them. At the same time, wealthy upper class women began to wear aprons made of sheer, fine cotton organza that may or may not have been embroidered. I'm making this apron out of fine, semi-sheer, lightweight linen. It's not really fine enough to have been an apron that would have been worn by an upper class woman, and it's also not really appropriate, not heavy enough to have been worn by a working class woman. Maybe it could have been worn by a woman in service in a large house who needed to be more presentable. I don't know, that's the story I'm going with since this is the linen I have on hand.
My plan is pretty simple. One large rectangle will form the main apron, then another long rectangle to make the waistband and ties, and a third, smaller rectangle to make the bib front. With my linen fabric washed, dried, and cut, I finished the side and bottom edges with a hem stitch by finger pressing the edge up twice before stitching along the length. This is the same stitch I used to finish the edges on the linen shift that I made last year. Once that was done, I took the waistband strip and folded it in half, finger pressing the crease in. I then folded each edge of the strip inwards to meet the center crease. This is the same process you would use to make bias binding, except instead of working on the bias, you work on the straight of grain. With that done, I used some of my little quilting clips to keep the waistband folded together. Then I found the center and marked it with a pin. I matched the center of the apron to the center of the waistband and pinned them together. I wanted the gathers to start 4 inches from the center line on either side, so I pinned the apron into the waistband at that point as well. I marked a pin at the point I wanted the apron to stop, a little over half my waist measurement, and pinned the side edge of the apron in there. My original plan to form the pleats was to do them by hand with no math, since I had such a small space to work with. That plan may have worked out, but I just hate making pleats. I find it so difficult to get them to stay in place. I used my little quilt clips along the top edge, but every time I removed the clips to make way for the waistband, my pleats fell out. I could probably have corrected this by basting the pleats together first, but instead I tried a different method. Using a fabric pen, I marked every ½ inch along the fabric I had to pleat. Then I did a large basting stitch through each marked point. Once complete, I squished the fabric up along the thread, trying to space it out evenly within the remaining area of the waistband. This ended up giving me gathers, not pleats, but I'm really pleased with the end result, and it was so much easier than dealing with the pleats. Next, I whip stitched the gathers to the waistband, making sure to go through all layers with each stitch. I continued the whip stitch along the edges of the ties, too. I finished all 4 edges of the apron bib with the same stitch I used for the apron skirt. I laid it on the skirt with the wrong sides together, and then used a whip stitch to attach it to the bottom edge of the waistband, trying not to make my stitch visible from the other side. To wear it with the bib, I simply flip it up and pin it to my stays, but I can also wear it with the bib tucked down on the inside. And of course, I was too excited to rinse out the fabric pen yet. I'll have to remember to do that before I wear it.